Social movements. Analyze and understand social movements. Explain stages of social movements. Describe how social movements are tackled and handled. Identify the main challenges faced by the reformers. Analyze the changes occurred after social movements. Let us first understand the entire overview of how social movements came into existence. Throughout the history, there have been enormous social movements that have been drastically changing the society in respective of the era in which they occurred. There have been failed as well as successful social movements. Social movements are not planned, they happen according to the circumstances. Like for every action, there is an opposite reaction, same way social movement occurs. Social movements varies widely in their ideologies. Some social movements happen because of revolt, while some happen to the existing system. Social movements are to change the society in which they are functioning. Many social movements happen to change the existing governing system, which was rigid and created havoc. Social movements have led to many drastic changes. Social movement, in simple words, can be defined as a strategy of local reformers to revolt against the ruling community to create a social change. Social movements are not spontaneous events. They are pre-planned and pre-decided to revolt against the government. Understanding social movements. Social movement can be characterized into 4 stages of its occurrence. The 4 stages of social development are emergence, coalescence, bureaucratization, and decline. These 4 stages have its different understanding. Social movement can be majorly calculated on these 4 stages. Social movements went through lots of ups and downs. As in every business there is profit and loss, same way social movement has its good as well as bad points. Social movement went through national emergency, through the breakdown of the economy, to the governance of the ruling party and exploitation of the lower class, to the decline of the monarchy. Social movements are only based on the nature of occurrence in the national integrity. Many great reformers revolted through which we have a better world to live. Otherwise, we would have been in someone else's monarchy. Social movements have been mentioned in various research including sociology, science, politics, history, economics, and philosophy. The main purpose of this study is to understand and evaluate the occurrence, how social movement became the national problem and how it was an uprising movement. Social movements have created national emergency worldwide. Social movement is different in every stage like pre-independence, independence and post-independence. Industrial revolution made a drastic change in the nation. Society was frustrated from the ruling party, so the unorganized group of people came together and started revolting against them, which created a national emergency. People from different caste, creed and religion came as one and started revolting against the higher authority. The decision of coming together maintains balance and equality within the country. Social movement is the angst of the common people who tolerated the rule of the upper class, which later created a high revolt in the country. Social movement created uprising all over the world, which created a better life for humans to stay. The Renaissance period brought major changes in terms of industrialization, liberalization, and privatization. Stages of social movements. There are 4 stages of social movement which can be classified as emergence, coalescence, bureaucratization, decline. These 4 terms can be elaborated briefly according to its occurrence. Emergence. This created a start for social movement. Emergence, as the word suggests, created awareness among the people about the uprising. The government proposed procedures and policies in different ways, but the grievances were not solved, which created emergence in the society. People came to know about the uprising through newspapers or letters, but these actions were not strategic and not collective. This created a national emergency and awareness among the common people, which in turn resulted into revolt. The emergence also had its drawbacks. As technology was not advanced, people were informed lately about the uprising. While some people had the attitude of not empathizing to these social revolts, social movements had many hidden problems which resulted gap between the common people and the ruling party. Coalescence. In this stage, social movement became particularly popular topic between the communities. People were aware about the uprisings but never took collective decision to support the reformers who are fighting for the country. They were thinking it is just the problem which will be resolved and will not create any emergency in the society. But in this stage, people sensed the feeling of something being wrong. At this point, leadership started emerging and strategies were developed for success, which worked out tremendously. Also, at this stage, mass demonstrations occurred in order to display the social movement's power and to make clear demands from the ruling empire. Most importantly, this is the stage at which the movement becomes more than just random upset individuals. At this point, they are now organized and strategic in their outlook. This period created a revolutionary era for the freedom fighters that changed the definition of injustice to the common people. This social movement was by the people, of the people, for the people. This era not only changed the world but also even divided the world. Boycotting and burning the goods and products was the significant dimension of the coalescence stage. Bureaucratization. The stage formally created complete awareness among the people about the uprising and downfall of the monarchy. The sweetness of success happened during this stage. Trained staffs were appointed to carry out the functions of organizations. In this phase, political power is at the peak than in the previous stages. Many social movements at this level fail because reformers cannot bureaucratize in this way. They also end up fizzling out because it is difficult for members to sustain the emotional excitement necessary and because continued mobilization becomes too demanding for participants. Decline. Finally, the last stage in the social movement life cycle is decline or institutionalization. Decline does not necessarily mean failure for social movements through. Instead, there are 4 ways in which social movements can decline: repression, co-optation, success, failure. These factors do not determine whether the movement is unsuccessful, and it depends on the factors and conditions through which it is going. Repression is the revolt in which reformers uses violent and dangerous tactics in which social movement can fail. Co-optation is in which other opponent party can bribe the reformer so that the leadership is diverted, which may lead to the failure of social movement. Success happens because of leadership and defined goals. Failure happens due to mass mobilization, which is all dependent on the above factors. To summarize, social movements continue to be a main force in the world. Sociologists provide important analysis of social movements that helps us to understand both past and present societies, as well as to anticipate changes and trends that may play out in the future. As new movements develop, they can learn from the investigation of prior movements' experience to better prepare for future possibilities. The analysis provided by the above 4 stages of social movements is an urgent aspect in the development of knowledge about collective action. As social movements continue to change, so do the methods sociologists use in analyzing them. Examining the 4 stages of how social movements is one way of understanding how social movements form, develop, solidify and decline. Social movement tackled and handled. Social movements are the biggest platform for common people to participate in public politics. Social movements follow a process which are emergence, coalescence, bureaucratization and decline. Social movement can take place in different situations at different circumstances. Ultimately, it will result into a failure or success. Young people were truly enthusiastic and full of zeal about the injustice happening around the world, so they decided to stand up against the revolt happening, which resulted into failure or success. Common people were extremely skeptical about the young leaders not having leaders to guide the movement and develop a strategy around the movement so that they can achieve success. Adolf Hitler was a man who played with strategies. He started building strategy around the party with his troops, which led him to be a vast leader. Alexander invaded the entire world with his strategies and leadership quality. Mahatma Gandhi was a man who believed in peace. His leadership quality made him handle the most difficult situation. All the vast leaders of this century won success because of the mind they used behind the strategies and the way they had the leadership quality to lead the world with burden. Earlier, in those revolutionary days, women were ill-treated and were treated as slaves, but now women are treated equally as men. There was discrimination between blacks and whites, rich and poor class, upper class and lower class, but now, just because of the revolutionaries, everything seemed to be just like a cakewalk. In India, sati burning was the most dangerous, which is now completely eradicated from the society. The great leaders of the world handled social movement efficiently with success and failure. Social movement is the biggest chapter of the history, which never can be replaced by any other phenomena. Economy brought the social movement into existence with many other phenomena which created distress and hustle and bustle all over the world. Money is a power which converted into fights, terrorism, loots and crime. All the other problems arise just because of money. Money is the biggest gambler which gambles the world onto it. Social movement not only brought harmony and peace, but along with that there are other problems related to monetary funds. Social reformers created magic in this world and made it a beautiful place to stay. Main challenges faced by the reformers. 20th century was like a progressive movement for social reformers. Supporters of this movement were an established political party. Social reformers tried to improve social condition by implementing modern thinking for the progress of the society. Many progressive concerns in previous history were: white men were allowed to vote and elect representatives to government, but in new 20th century, many women were demanding the right to vote. Prohibition. Alcohol was a social evil for many social reformers, which caused marriages to break. Many wanted to prohibit liquor. Race. Racism was a cause to demolish the country. Black Americans were treated as slaves, so tension between the races boiled over. Children. Child labor is the biggest problem of the country. Children were ill-treated at the workplace and they were forced to work for many hours, which created distress in the society. In 20th century, child labor is a serious offense which is mentioned in the jurisdiction of the country. Workers. People were discriminated on the terms of age, religion, creed, caste and gender. They were exploited at the workplace based on these factors and allowances were given accordingly. Workers' exploitation was the main problem in the 16th century. Direct elections. Elections were earlier on the basis of many factors in each state legislature. There are many other considerations which can be taken into account. Social movement not only changed the entity, policies and procedure, but also changed the dimension to look into. Getting justice was not impossible for the reformers, but they went through lots of struggles to get justice. Social movement reformers faced major challenges for common people like us. Social movement is the biggest challenge that cannot be accomplished by common people. Globalization has affected social change a lot. Globalization has accelerated the process of change, creating change for the future. The development of the society came into existence when people from different communities came together, started mixing up, which gave communication broader view in larger aspect. The most important economic influence on the modern industries is capitalization, which gives rise to the increase in technological advancement. Science and technology are the important factors which influences the country to grow. Social movements culminate together to form a revolutionary movement which results into mobilization, the perception of common interest and the opportunity to act. Social movement is a series of events which undergoes changes from time to time. Social movement is a connection between the forces and field of action which goes hand in hand. Globalization is always portrayed as an economy phenomena, but in fact it is all the forces like economic, political, social, science coming together to form one group. The technology has widened the shelter by getting people closer through global communication and treating the country as one nation. There are many other factors which contribute to globalization. End of the Cold War, the demolition of Soviet-style communism and the entire information available encouraged people to get global outlook. The world has got so closer that it is like interconnected and intertwined between each other. Globalization is a topic which discussed everywhere and every time and every moment. Globalization is a multi-directional flow that influences the world. Changes occurred after social movements. Social movements gave rise to globalization. As globalization has accelerated the social changes, the uncertainty has increased for the future. Recent developments have taken place in the field of international relations. Much contemporary scholarship converges around the idea that the realist state system is unsatisfactory and thus conceptualization of the international system. This development has opened up the possibility for thinking about the role of non-state factors in international affairs. Accordingly, one element in the contemporary challenges to realist orthodoxy has been the emergence of most earnest consideration of transnational actors. To give salience to social movements in connection with social change and modernity is to give silence to the notion of process. The development of a new sense of self, subjectivity and individuality which distinguishes the modern individual from the traditional one has been the theme of prior social movements for more than 100 years. Changes after social movements occurred in many fields like economic, political, financial, technological, etc. Diversified globalization and privatization has also changed overall scenario of the world. One of the most obvious changes which are currently occurring in the change is distribution of population. The ratio between the developed countries and the developing countries also can be seen. The ratio between the developed countries and developing countries also can be seen, but developing countries became a larger proportion of the world population, which afterwards increased from 68% in 1950 to 82% in 2010. While the population of the developed countries have declined from 32% of the total world population in 1950 to 18% in 2010. China and India continue to be the largest populated countries, followed by the US as a distant third. However, growth in population throughout the world is slowing down. Population growth among developed countries has been slowing down since the 1950s and at present is at 0.3% annual growth. Growth in population among the less developed countries, excluding the least developed countries, has also been slowing down since 1960 and at present has 1.3% of annual growth. Population growth among the least developed countries has not slowed, but it is the highest at 2.7% of annual growth. Urbanization accompanied modernization and then the industrialization. All these factors were affected and many changes took place just because of different social movements which took place and gave rise to globalization, privatization and liberalization. The notion of social progress or social cultural changes have given rise to various social changes across the world. Social changes have thus affected the cultural behavior, philosophical behavior, the scientific, religious and economic. Thus, socio-cultural evolution is the product of social changes. The societies and cultures have changed overall and have made a highly unique impact on the behavior of the society. At the different stages of social development, the cultures also changed, and thus all these made a strong and unique impact on the human behavior. Social progress also developed after the social movements in varied fields like economic, financial, technological, and scientifically as well. After introducing the social theories, the social progress developed and affected the society as well. The idea of progress is also one of the products which social movement gave us. The improvement, advancement, and the other changes led to the idea of the progress after the enlightenment of the social movements and its various campaigns which happened in the country. Changes always came from two sources. One is random or unique factors like climate, weather, and presence of groups of people in the society. Second is a systematic factor like successful development that has the same general requirements like stable and flexible government, enough free and available resources, and a diversified social organization of society. Thus, social change is usually a combination of systematic factors along with some random or unique factors. In modern society, the world experienced human construction, an experience that gave rise to both to an overwhelming sense of freedom and possibility and to a basic anxiety about the openness of the future of the society in the world. The sociological difference is based on all these changes. Thus, understanding of the relationship between man and the supernatural changes in property relations and the demographic changes accompanied industrialization, modernization, liberalization, and privatization. The social changes are always associated with modernity. The social changes are always associated with modernity, industrialization, and especially urbanization. In this way, new sense of freedom associated with modernity included awareness and an experience of time after the social movements took place. The cause of social change has diversity in it, and the process in which it is changed can be identified as short-term or long-term developments. Change can either be rotating or it should have one direction. The mechanisms of social change can vary or it can be intervened. Several mechanisms can be combined to become one uniform change, like for example, intervention from government regulation and competition can stimulate one's business. Social change itself can be structured as well as non-structured. Change from social movements brings uniformity, harmony, and peace within the system, but there are many to destroy this social system. Social movement is a mass movement. It is not done by a single person, and it is the permutation and combination of various groups of people coming together. Social movement is a voice of somebody which gives direction to manage society. Social movements will happen and will never end. It is the society who has to change from time to time. Social movement, no doubt, has brought changes and even helped in shaping the country and its culture and will continue to do so. Racism, it prevails in the country, which gives birth to many other social problems and a national emergency in the country. This world is like a free bird, no doubt, but it is yet somehow governed by the political, legal, social laws which will continue to operate. No doubt, globalization is changing the way in which social movements are being shaped and are changing radically. Religious obligations happen worldwide precisely during cultural change. Women are given respect globally, which leads to progression. People from different caste, creed and religion came as one and started revolting against the higher authority. The decision of coming together maintains balance and equality within the country. Social movement is the angst of the common people who tolerated the rule of the upper class, which later created a high revolt in the country. Social movement created a rising all over the world, which created a better life for humans to stay. Social movement all started because rich people started dominating the society and treating poor class as slaves. Social movement changed the entire world. Every human being today is like a free bird. This is just because of the well-being of the good deeds done by the revolutionaries.